Then Nissan says it's four-wheel drive system, and oh. Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and we are doing our off-road POV with the Nissan Pathfinder Rock Creek Edition. And honestly, I had a conversation with myself for about 5 minutes before deciding to do this, because I typically reserve this trail for body on frame trucks and SUVs that have at least around 9 inches to 10 inches of ground clearance. This has 7.7 inches of ground clearance, and it's unibody with independent front and rear suspension. So that means that we don't have a lot of articulation, which, again, this trail might not look that difficult on camera, but there's a lot of really deep ruts and basically sections where I could potentially get stuck. And so, as I always say, you got to risk it for the biscuit. And frankly, I would feel a lot more comfortable if this was shorter in the wheelbase, because having a long wheelbase and having to articulate a bunch when you don't have articulation, like look at this right here. This thing right here is pretty, woo, going on 3 wheels. Again, it goes through fine, but it definitely feels a little bit sketchy. But let's talk about how the Rock Creek actually drives off-road. So first off, this has off-road tuned suspension, is what Nissan basically says. And what that means also is just that it's supposed to, I guess, handle better off-road, and it's slightly lifted so it can fit these bigger tires. If you guys are wondering, for the tire size, 265 by 60 by 18, and they're pretty dang aggressive. If you want to see what the tires look like, just go watch the main channel review. I'll probably have, oh my gosh, probably have the off-road review up. But then this is crazy. Like, driving this in like I've driven this trail in my Ram TRX before. I've driven it in my Ford Raptor and Toyota 4Runner as well. And it's a pretty rough riding trail overall, and it has some level of difficulty, but not a lot. But in this, it feels extreme. It feels like I'm doing some hardcore off-roading. But again, if I was in or my Wrangler, if I was in my Wrangler on this trail, which I have taken it down, it would be like do nothing's happening. And that just shows you just the difference between doing solid axles versus independent suspension. I'm trying to make my tripod rattle less. And then unibody versus body on frame. With these unibody vehicles, they're so rigid that you really can't go fast off-road, or else you're going to feel everything, whereas the body and frame stuff seems to do a little bit better with getting rid of a lot of the bumps and all that. But I'm super impressed with the Pathfinder Rock Creek, frankly. It's despite the fact that it is not super good from a ground clearance perspective, has really good tires and a really good four-wheel drive system that which I'm confused on this drive system, by the way, because there's a lot of articles that say this is an all-wheel drive system, but then Nissan says it's four-wheel drive system, and oh, ouch. Yep, that's the ground clearance thing. Yeah, Nissan says this is a four-wheel drive system, and I'm like, who's right? Ooh. Yeah, we're gonna have to go check on that one. Okay, so I am back after checking the damages, and sorry Nissan in advance. Nothing is actually broken, but basically a piece of plastic is now hanging from the bottom because I ripped up some of the plastic molding that's on the bottom, but nothing important actually got damaged. But that gives me a reference point for what I need to do later on in this trail, and that is literally avoid every single rock ever, because we just don't have the clearance. Now this doesn't have skid plates either, it just has a bunch of plastic on the bottom, hence the plastic trim that I just ripped off. And so yeah, it doesn't give you a massive amount of confidence with impacts. And so overall, my recommendation, and frankly, it makes sense with the suspension this has and everything, is just take the off-roading slow, and don't do a point of view video while you're talking and get yourself distracted and collide with a rock. But that's why I make these videos, guys, is so that I can make the mistakes and you don't have to. But continuing along, like I was saying earlier, I'm pretty dang impressed with this package. This was the first crossover that was able to make it up my Sandy Hill climb that I have for the main channel video. And so I feel like that just says a lot about the, you know, stock capability of this, because even the Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe with the Overland off-road group, which is basically a Trailhawk minus the sway bar disconnect, could not make it up that hill. And so like that is pretty much, I wouldn't say peak off-roader in this segment. I'd probably leave that for the Land Rover Defender, because that's probably the best in terms of unibody SUVs that have independent front rear suspension from an off-road perspective. But I mean, it's a Jeep, for goodness sake, and being able to like climb up a hill that a Jeep could not, I think is pretty impressive and says a lot about this. But definitely, if you're like a, you know, regular on off-road trails, then I would consider getting a lift for this. And you guys know that I film for a couple Nissan dealers. They're owned by the same company, and one of them is the Tyndale Nissan in Southtown. And this is not like a paid advertisement, but they've got a guy in their shop that lifts Nissans all the time, and he builds like custom lifts. And so if you live in Utah, he might be the guy that you want to get with this Pathfinder Rock Creek Edition, so that he can get you a better setup from a ground clearance perspective. Yeah, we're not going through that. Explaining to Nissan why I got their vehicle all muddy and there's things dangling from the undercarriage, that would not be a great conversation. So we're gonna keep the rowdiness down to a minimum and just try to make it down this trail. Now this next part of the trail is pretty much all the same. If anything exciting pops up, then I'll just turn the camera back on for you guys, but I'm just gonna keep going down the trail a little bit farther until, yeah, stuff pops up. Well, in a normal off-roader, this section here wouldn't be all that exciting, but in a Pathfinder that doesn't have a lot of ground clearance, it is, well, exciting for you guys, but extremely nerve-wracking for me. I don't know how I'm gonna avoid this. Great. Okay, let's take it real slow, because I'm probably gonna hit another rock here. Oh. And I keep hearing little pops because the little dangling piece of plastic just keeps flapping against rocks. I guess that's my early warning sign to if I'm going to collide with something hardcore again. Here's another one that might... see, I don't like this. I like how like capable this is with crawling and how much grip it has. I just don't like the fact that I keep feeling like I'm going to damage something because, again, 7.7 inches of ground clearance. Ah, it made it over the rocks though, so hey, it did it. Here's where things get way more nerve-wracking. I mean, interesting from a YouTube perspective, and that is entering the forest. This is what we will title this area. Basically, we have a bunch of big, scary rocks, and when I say big and scary, I mean big and scary for the Pathfinder, and a lot of having to articulate around the trail because we have to avoid said rocks and also deal with the off-cambered sections. That thing's definitely gonna hit. That thing's definitely gonna hit. Let's go on with my tire. Okay. And this is like the most clenchy off-roading I've ever done. I'm on like you know, sometimes with these videos, you know, I will get like a little bit nervous and, you know, obviously kind of play it up a little bit, but in this, honestly, it's like the opposite. It's like I'm just being like, oh yeah, it's not too bad, but I am a little bit nervous. But good sign is if anything does happen, this is pretty easy for people to access, so me and the Pathfinder would be able to be rescued. Maybe this will make the video more exciting because, you know, most other channels will do this off-roading in a manner that I'd recommend, which is having, you know, a crew with them and backup and all that kind of stuff. But this is like those survival shows where it's like all alone. So if anything goes bad, it's like, well, gotta deal with it myself. Now, the one thing I will say is this trail doesn't feel too bad so far because, and hopefully I won't eat my words in a few minutes here, this is not super big. Okay, yep, I forgot about this. Well, I didn't, but I forgot that it came this soon. Yeah, I was gonna say this isn't too big so I can avoid stuff. Now these rocks would completely take me out. So, oh my gosh, that thing's, it's crazy. So like, I'm used to coming through here with like my, cause I've gone through here a few times with my trucks, just to scout it out. I'm on 3 wheels. LOL. I've gone through this a few times with my trucks just to scout it out, and these rocks and everything I'm going over look like nothing in those trucks. And like, I can just like vroom right over them. Whereas this, it's like, Jiminy Cricket. Oh. It's hot outside, but that's not why I'm sweating right now. Wow. I feel like I'm going to be a much better off-roader after this video, honestly. Getting through this trail with this little amount of ground clearance and this long of a wheelbase, because again, this is a 3-row family SUV. Nobody in their right mind would ever take this thing here. That's why I exist, I suppose. Yeah, I can't imagine, like, this is something I've been asking myself. So like, obviously a lot of modern SUVs, this turned into like a talk show, because I'm like nervously talking so that I can like try to calmly go through this. But you know, I've been asking myself, like, would anyone in their right mind, if you guys are wondering why I'm slapping those flies, would anyone in their right mind actually take their family out in like a unibody crossover SUV off-road? Because like, to get through a lot of obstacles, you have to go on 3 wheels and like you're tipping side to side. And I'm like, I wouldn't want my kids to be in the vehicle if that was happening. Like, I'm on 3 wheels again, constantly. I feel like I would feel like that would scar my kids for life. That was not a good sound. But that was the suspension probably, because going on 3 wheels and then kind of popping back down, and so then it'll compress tightly. Sorry if the camera view is not that great. I am trying my best, but I also don't want to get stranded. How the heck am I gonna... That's gonna hit. That's definitely gonna hit. Jiminy. I can't concentrate right now. I can't even talk right now. Okay. Ah! Oh. I'm gonna have like the best night ever, because all of this tension, and I'm gonna get home and I'm gonna be like, ah, home sweet home. But you know what? I think the worst is almost behind us. Wow. But at least this is probably the most thorough test in the YouTube world with the Rock Creek. Not trying to say that anyone else's tests aren't as good, but I've noticed that, you know, maybe probably because people don't want to rip off plastic trays on the bottom of vehicles. And it's not the whole tray, it's just like a little part. Maybe that's why they don't take these vehicles on courses like this, and they just take them up dirt hills and then call it an off-road review. Wow. Okay, well, we'll be back. Okay, so I forgot to start recording a couple minutes ago, but I have started my mountain climb here, and this is arguably the most challenging part for any vehicle through this pass that I take basically to get to the next off-roading location. And that's just because we're already really high elevation, we're climbing to higher elevation, so you know, it strains the powertrain. And then on top of that, it's basically climbing up a bunch of really slick hills. So if you guys don't know, you basically have a layer of really dense, well, it's rock, so it is dense, but basically a dense, hard packed layer. And then on top, you've got a very like thin, sandy layer. And so it's really hard for vehicles to get grip, because basically they spin through the sand, and then as soon as they get through the thin layer of sand that they're spinning on, then they just hit slick rock, essentially. And so it's definitely a challenge, and this is by far the most challenging part. Oh boy. Well, come on, Nissan, I believe in you. You are the GOAT. Come on, Nissan. Okay, and you notice that I'm doing this controlled. So I get comments of people saying that I need to momentum up things more. That is not what you want to do in off-road situations, especially when you're on, this is like a very thin ridge at the top, and so if you momentum off, you'll just fly right off. So that was impressive. I am super impressed with the tire grip that this has and the four-wheel drive system. It seriously, that's those two things, the tires and the four-wheel drive system, are definitely carrying this. Now this is where I get real sweaty. So first gear, we're going to turn the hill descent control system on. So I've got it in first gear on purpose because, well, this hill frankly would probably be harder to climb than the other hill we just went up. So that means that it's really difficult to go down in terms of the traction. And the best part about this hill, which makes it super fun and safe, is that you just would fly off. Like it, because you guys can see the turn up there is very sharp. But honestly, this is doing a pretty good job. This doesn't have a low speed transfer case, but it's actually pretty dang impressive with how slow it crawls. Now I do have my foot permanently planted on the brake. There you go. So yeah, I guess that with this, a combination of the hill descent control, foot on the brake, because the hill descent control is a little bit too fast, but the reason I've got both is, so basically with my foot on the brake, I'm able to take it at the speed that I think is best for that hill. And then if for some reason I lose the Pathfinder a little bit, and we got the hill descent control off now, then the hill descent control system, it gets up to the max speed of the hill descent control, and then it kind of is almost like a little bit of a safety net. So that's just a pro tip. Even if you're, hit the bottom again, even if you're not using this, if you're just off-roading a vehicle and you're on unfamiliar terrain, that's kind of what I recommend. I usually don't just rely on the hill descent control because most systems, they just go slightly too fast, at least for some of the conditions we have here in Utah with, again, that very hard packed layer and then the sand on the top. But other than the ground clearance, this is really good. Oh, I still have it in manual mode. I'm like, why is this thing not downshifting? Other than the ground clearance, this is honestly a really good off-road SUV. The four-wheel drive system is seriously impressive. This has done the least amount of spinning, and I think a big part of that is the tires that I have seen in any of these unibody, independent front rear suspension crossovers that I've taken off-road. And I think it'll also show with the rock crawling section that I have in the main channel. If you guys haven't seen that video, go watch it. But yeah, it's really good traction control system and really good tire setup. The only thing that I'd say, if Nissan's watching this for some reason, just maybe, I think this setup is perfect for most people, because most people are probably not going to take this on terrain that I just took this on. So I think that just leave it at how it is for most people, because it's a really good looking crossover, and most people won't take it off-road. And if they do take it off-road, they're just going to go down dirt trails that don't have like anything that's really going to be an issue with the ground clearance. But I would say it'd be pretty cool if you released an aftermarket lift kit for this, just similar to like what Toyota does with the Tacoma, right? So that people could, you know, basically get a little bit more ground clearance out of this. And, you know, maybe if they want to put bigger tires as well, they could. These tires are already, though, they're huge for this. So I don't really think this would need bigger tires. Just a little bit of a lift, I think, would go a long way for this. And maybe also, you know, put some Bilstein shocks with that kit, since there isn't an official Pro 4X for the Pathfinder. So that could be kind of like the unofficial Pro 4X. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about this after seeing it off-road.